Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ronald Acuña injury and what that means for him and the team going forward. Got myself, Tyler, Will, and John here to discuss this one. Boys, it sucks, man. I know, Will, you're not a Braves fan. You're a Phillies fan, and it hurts the Braves, which is good in a way, but you never want to see something like this. You never want to see a player get injured, especially somebody like Ronald Acuna. Will, for you, what does this injury mean overall for the Braves?
I think for the Braves, this makes their chances of climbing up to overtake the division lead from the Phillies a lot harder. Sure, their offense does look like it has the chance to get better just because a lot of guys are underperforming, but the Phillies right now have a 6-game lead over the Braves, and it's only going to get harder as the season goes on. So I imagine the Braves will still be okay because they have a good solid lead in the wild card spots. There's a lot of mediocre teams in the National League, so it seems like if you have a 500 record, you'll make the playoffs. And really, that's all the Braves need. Maybe secretly this will be the good year for them because last time Acuna was out for the rest of the season, they won a World Series.
Yeah, and that's something everybody's bringing up. I don't think you wish that if you're a Braves fan anyway. But yeah, John, over to you now. What does this mean for the Braves?
I think Will hit the nail on the head. It definitely makes it harder, but honestly, in terms of offensive production, I don't think that it hurts as much as people might think. Obviously, a unanimous MVP is a big loss, but he was only just hitting his stride in terms of uh, taking off this season. At least in my opinion, he was. Um, because he was only batting like 250.
Mm.
Whereas, it's not like how it was in previous years where at this point he was over 300. So, you gotta take that into account in terms of his bat. The biggest loss, at least in my opinion, is his stolen base. What he was offering on the base paths, as opposed to, the rest of the team.
It was such a weird play too. Playing the Pirates, so I actually seen it live, and it was like I don't even know if he was trying to steal or if he was fake stealing. What it was, but he just took a bad step, and I knew it, man. I seen it, and I was like, I texted these guys. I was like, they haven't said, but I would be surprised if it's not an ACL. We see it all the time in football. Like those non-contact knee injuries are never good. It's
He
always
planted and just crumbled.
yeah, it's usually an ACL, MCL, and this is now a second torn ACL for Acuna in the last 3 years, and I mean that's scary for them. I think in the future will. I mean, do you see? How do you see this impacting Acuna in the future? Like we know that he is an amazing player, obviously having a down year at this point in time. But I mean, again, it's you had the 2020 season. I think is when he tore it. Then you had or 2021 he tore his ACL. Excuse me. 2022 he comes back from it. 2023 he wins the MVP, and now we're in 2024 he tears it again. Like after two ACL injuries, what do you think happens with him?
I believe this is also his other ACL, so
Yes.
he's torn
Correct.
both now. Um,
Correct.
the first question will be is how it impacts his speed. I mean, if you steal 70 bases the previous season and you're having your second knee injury on the other knee now, that's going to be the big question. I have no worries about his abilities to hit and hit for power. When he comes back, will he be the leadoff guy he was now that could truly be a strong five tool player in every area? Or now is he going to be a potentially less of a leadoff man if he doesn't have the speed and just more of a number three power bat? He'll be fine. He might have a little bit of getting used to if he follows the same trend as before, because in 2022 he had an off year, but then of course he exploded in 2023. Given the depth and the overall strength that the Braves lineup is and will be for the foreseeable future, still he should be able to fit in fine, whatever his role ends up being coming back from the injury.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, like the speed is a big factor for him, and maybe that's gets affected, but it didn't affect him previously. John, I want to ask like a bigger picture question here. I think, in terms of myself, I find him to be one of the most electrifying players to watch. What does this injury mean for the game of baseball? I mean, we're in May and we're going to miss him for the rest of the year. I don't know if that injury is going to carry into next season, but I mean, one of the league's best players is now out for the year.
I mean, I said earlier, unanimous MVP in the National League last year. It's a huge loss. You said it in terms of one of those dynamic players that you're just drawn toward. I think it's in terms of baseball, it's a huge loss. In terms of the Braves, it's an even bigger loss. So all around, it's definitely it sucks.
Yeah.
Just plain out, it sucks.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the clubhouse too, I wonder how that affects it. Like, I mean, these guys have. I don't want to say they're struggling. Like, they're still a couple games over 500. Like, they're still a good team. But I seen
And
like Michael Harris posted a tweet and obviously was upset about it. And he'll still be around, right? But it's one of those things where when you lose your clubhouse leader. How does that affect them? Will, do you have any take on that? Do you think this affects them just in the way of him not being on the field and being there, despite his lack of production this year? If that affects them?
I do think this injury will light a fire under the offense. It didn't necessarily do it today's game versus the Nationals, but when Spencer Strider went down earlier in the season, the pitching rotation continued to be extremely effective, and that was the immediate question mark: was you lost your ace that has been healthy the last 2 years, when especially at the end of the season you've had questionable health status with a lot of the pitchers, but Chris Sale has been amazing. Ronaldo Lopez has been incredible. I have a feeling that the Braves offense, being a bunch of veterans together who have been together for a long time and have developed this brotherhood, will take this man down situation and truly step up. I believe they got Austin Riley and Sean Murphy back
Yes.
today, and if it wasn't today, they're going to get him back soon. But ICU, Riley, Olson, everyone stepping up that was underperforming. Not necessarily they're going to put on the historic numbers the staff did last year, but enough that very quickly you might forget to realize that, oh yeah, Acuna is out of this lineup. John said he wasn't performing, so losing 245 at the top of the order isn't a terrible loss. But yes, his presence more than anything is going to be felt throughout. So just find ways to make up for the lost production.
Yeah, and again, you would imagine that based on his track record, if he was to play out the rest of the year, his numbers would improve and he would get better. Obviously, not going to be able to see that now, but yeah, man, it sucks. I wish him a speedy recovery. My NL MVP predictions not looking good. I had him and Tatis 1 and 2. That's looking pretty bad right now. But
So
again,
yeah,
I mean for the Braves, it's a huge loss, and they just have so many questions surrounding their team at this point in time. I think there's a bigger discussion to be had, which we are probably going to have on our show later this week. But John, we'll kind of wrap this up here. For the Braves, what can they? I guess just give us a quick snippet of what you think their outlook is, if they can do anything about this injury, and how can they replace a guy like Acuna?
well, I think if you're the Braves, you have to make a decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to try and let's face it, you can't replace a star like Ronald Acuña Jr. outright. But you might be able to rebuild him. It's like the old Moneyball thing. We might be able to rebuild him in the aggregate. You know, you can't replace 16 stolen bases in the middle of May when the rest of your team only has 11.
Hmm.
You can't. Yeah, the next closest guy is Michael Harris, who has 7. By the way, so that tells you on the base paths how dynamic he was, where he can stretch a single into a triple by stealing bases. You know, um, but in terms of his bat, like I said, it was just hitting its stride. It wasn't. He wasn't batting over 300, so it's not that devastating in terms of that. But you know, you might be able to go out and get somebody like, a like a Bretton Doyle, or uh, bring up a guy like JP Martinez that's already in your system. Both guys having 14 stolen bases, so you got to you got to be creative here in terms of this. And if you're the rest of the lineup, you've got to really do what you can to get those offensive numbers up, because in terms of home runs, the Braves are at the bottom for the National League. And in terms of runs production, they're not doing too well. So offensively, they've got to pick it up.
Yeah. And I think we expect this offensive juggernaut with the Braves, and rightfully so. They've shown the last few years. This year is not quite where they want it to be. And again, when you're losing a guy that just came up winning an MVP, even having a down year, you'd expect him and the rest of the lineup to turn it around. And now they're going to have to find a way to do it without him. But that is all for us here. Again, we are going to have a larger discussion about this in our upcoming episode. So make sure to check us out on YouTube or Twitch for that. Obviously, if you're on YouTube here, Big League Breakdowns over there on Twitch as well. Make sure to follow us on our socials on Twitter at BL_breakdowns, and Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Big League Breakdowns. Give us a follow, and come back to these streams. We're having a good time here as we are closing in on the second month of the season, closing out here in the baseball season. But that is all for us here. We'll see you next time.